These are my headlights, and they are in really bad shape. You might not believe it, but I redid these about 12 months ago, and they're already in rough shape. These are my headlights, and they look terrible. So I'm gonna go ahead and restore them today. I'll show you guys the best kit that I've had the most luck with. Then I'll give you guys a tip at the end on how to make this restoration last for several years. These headlights were actually restored about 12 months ago using an off-the-shelf kit. I also opened them up. So what you do is you put them in the oven at a certain temperature, you open them up, and then you can paint the inside. Put them back together, refinish the outside, and as you can see, that did not hold up very well. So I think the 3M kit is probably one of the better ones in the market. 3M has a great name recognition out there. They make really good materials and parts. This video is not sponsored by them, but they do have a really good kit that will clear up most headlights. You will need a household drill though. I have sanded headlights by hand. It just takes forever. A lot of the headlight kits have everything you need to get started. However, they have two major flaws in my opinion. So I think usually if you have really bad headlights, the grit doesn't go low enough. This kit, for example, starts at a 500 grit. So 500 grit, if you have a lot of oxidation on your headlights, will just take ages to get through it. These aren't too bad since I redid them recently, but if you have really bad headlights, you might want to start at a 300 grit sandpaper. The other flaw that these kits have is really protecting that restored finish of the headlights. Some of them have a wipe-on clear coat, some of them have a spray or nothing. This kit doesn't include a clear coat. I've tried a lot of them out there, and most of the time they don't really hold up anyways. So near the end of the video, we're going to talk about the best option in order to protect those headlights. Before you get started, this is what you'll need: some warm soapy water, your restoration kit, whether it be 3M or another brand. Hopefully it's a drill based kit to save you a lot of time and effort. So you'll need your drill and then some painter's tape as well. The first step of starting the process is cleaning these headlights. So let's get to it. We need to apply some painter's tape. So I'm going to dry off all that water I just threw on there so that way the tape will stick better. I'm going to pop my hood so that way I don't have to tape along my hood as well. The trick to the painter's tape is to put it in the crack first between your headlight and the body piece, and then start to press it along the body. For tight corners, you want to do some smaller pieces so it doesn't bunch up as much. For added precaution while sanding, I'm going to add another layer on the outside of this. You may want to put a credit card along the edge here to make sure all the tape is down, because later we will be wet sanding and that water will get in all those cracks. So we're going to start the sanding process with the drill. So all we got to do is find our lowest grit size that came with the kit and the sanding orbital pad. So this will go into the chuck of the drill, and then this has a Velcro back. Things to keep in mind while you're sanding: you want to make sure not to apply too much pressure. Let the sandpaper do the work for you. You might have to go through a few of these. If you start off with the corners, you can put an angle on the drill, so you'll see me doing that. You also want to make sure you're keeping the drill moving. Don't stick it on one spot. You can overheat the plastic and your sandpaper will become clogged. The main goal of the first application of sanding is when you're done, everything should look uniform. Periodically, I'm going to wash the lens down and check it and see how I'm doing. If your headlights aren't that bad, maybe you just need a couple passes to hit all the spots. If your headlights are really bad, this could take a really long time to eat away at any oxidation on the headlights. Just know that any imperfection that shows up after this stage will probably show up until the very end. All right, so after you've used the lowest grit sandpaper, you want to wipe it down and double check your work. So if there's any glossy areas or spots of oxidation that you haven't removed yet, go ahead and go back and sand it again, because you probably won't get that out in the next stages. Before I switch sandpapers, I'm actually going to hand sand with the last 500 grit sandpaper. I'm going to go in a horizontal motion, so that way when I come back with the finer sandpaper, I'll know if I got all those old scratches out. Now it's time to switch to the 800 grit, and we're going to keep sanding until those horizontal lines that we just made are gone. So before I finish with the 800 grit, I'm going to do the same thing as I did last time. I'm going to do vertical hand sanding, so that way when I come in with the 3000 grit coming up, I'll know if I've gotten all of these scratches out. So on the next step, we're switching from a dry sand to a wet sand. So in between each pass, I'm going to wipe the lens down with water, make sure it's clean, and then always be sanding with the lens wet. This is a large jump from the 800 grit to the 3000, so that is why 3M asks you to do 10 to 12 passes with this to make sure you really get all those deeper scratches out that you made earlier. I just did 10 passes, so I'm going to wipe it down again and do one more round by hand. It's a little more gentle than sanding with the drill. After you finish with the 3000 grit, go ahead and look over the headlight. Make sure you can see none of the scratches from the 500 or the 800 grit sandpaper. If that does look good, wipe it down, dry it, and then we can start the compound process. This kit includes some rubbing compound. You can use any off-the-shelf compound as well. Go ahead and apply some compound to the foam pad. You always want this pad to have compound on it. You don't want to run this with it dry. So I'm going to put a couple dabs and then smear it onto the lens, and I'll have to keep adding that as I compound. Now's the moment of truth. After compounding it several times over, I'm going to wipe it down with a dry microfiber, and hopefully it looks great. If there's some areas that are a little hazy, we can buff a little bit more on those spots. Good deal. So it looks so much better than when we started. This is an older headlight, and there are some imperfections on the inside of the lens. So it's not gonna look perfect, but it's night and day better than it was when we started. Now we wanna remove all the painter's tape and wipe it down with soap and water. You don't want any of that compound to dry, because it can be a pain in the butt to get off. for a test drive last night. I can actually see an improvement in the headlight output, but we aren't done yet. There's no protection on these headlights now. So in about 6 months, if we did nothing, these will probably get cloudy again. So let's talk some options. First of all, we can just leave them as is. In about 6 months time, we could just rebuff them. We wouldn't have to resand because it's only 6 months of oxidation. We could just rebuff and they would clear right up. But nobody wants to do that every 6 months. The second option is to use a wipe-on clear coat that comes with a lot of these kits. But the wipe-on clear coat's really thin and it doesn't offer much protection. You might get a couple extra months out of that, but still it's gonna end up looking hazy from 6 to 12 months. The third option is to use one of the spray-on options available. So Meguiar's makes a clear coat meant for plastic headlights. SprayMax is another company that makes a 2K clear. So the can has a button on the bottom that injects a hardener into the can. So that will get you a really industrialized, strong clear coat. But spraying on clear coats can be really time consuming and difficult to do well. First, you're gonna mask off the entire front of the car. Make sure you don't overspray onto anything you don't want the clear coat to touch. If you go with a 2K clear coat, you'll have to be really cautious because it's extremely toxic. To apply any spray clear coat well, you need to do multiple coats. If you're doing several coats, you're probably gonna get orange peel though, especially if it's coming from a can. So orange peel is when the surface is uneven and it looks a little hazy just from the clear coat application. So what you have to do is you have to wait for it to dry, you have to wet sand that down and then buff it. It's just a lot of extra work. Even then, these clear coats don't last extremely long. That's because the plastic in the headlight, as it changes temperature, it expands and contracts, and that breaks down most of these clear coats regardless how strong they are. Finally, so what's the best option? I think it's using a clear film. So if we use a quality clear film, that's less prone to cracking over time, and it'll be a lot easier to apply than a spray-on clear coat. We can put this on with a heat gun, and this should last for several years. We don't have to worry about the clear coat cracking because this is a plastic base, and that will stretch and become elastic with the headlight over temperature changes. Make sure you subscribe or like because in my next video, I'm going to show you guys how to apply it. Thanks again for watching. Bye y'all.